I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is the Readathon. And I'm here with podcast partner extraordinaire, Mel Barrett. Hi, Mel. Remind everybody who you are.
Hi, Rebecca. I am Mel Barrett. I'm the host of the In Between podcast, an investigative true crime podcast. You can listen wherever you listen.
Now, Mel, I thought yesterday was a climactic day in court. I was kind of wrong, but first I want to start with a couple of pieces of news. There was a hearing at the end of court today where we learned a couple of big things.
Big things.
The biggest one being that Hank Brennan has apparently not calling any rebuttal witnesses. He's apparently changed his mind about
terrified.
that. Do you think it's fear? Do you think it's tactics? Do you think it's just he's afraid of the cross-examination of Judd Welcher?
I think the latter. I think that the past 2 days have gone not great for Hank with Dr. Rentschler and Dr. La Posada and the x-rays. So, you know, with the x-rays, and then we'll get to it later, I'm sure, but the debris that was in John's hoodie, if he brings Hartnett back and they cross her, it's going to become very clear to the jury that he's been
lying to them.
Deliberately lying the whole time.
Yes.
So I think he's afraid of Hartnett. I think he knows that Welcher is going to look like a bumbling idiot on the stand compared to these ARCAA guys.
Yep.
And that they have completely torn his report apart, especially Rentschler. And I have to say, I don't think I expected that from Rentschler.
Neither
I expected
did
it from Wolf.
I.
But Rentschler,
I thought he was going to be the dad again. He was not the dad today.
he was just going to be this sort of jovial, nice guy. He was not having any of it today. So I think it's hilarious that he's not calling anyone back.
I think it's important to remember with witnesses like Rentschler and La Posada, they are essentially professional witnesses. I mean, Rentschler is a scientist, but he's been called to court probably hundreds of times, right?
Yeah.
He understands cross-examination tactics, he understands tricks, and he knows how to evade them successfully. I just want to read something for folks who just want to understand why I keep harping on this taillight thing. Somebody very conveniently sent me a screenshot of that part of the testimony. Question: the debris you ultimately got from the shirt or shirts, you don't know if that debris may have been in the bag and the shirts picked up the debris in the bag or otherwise, correct? Correct. Because they were housed together? Yes, together. That's correct. So to my question, the pieces you saw were not embedded in a shirt when you examined them, right? Correct. So there's no evidence of taillight in the shirt, period.
End of story.
I think that today was finally, Jackson, I think, maybe read my tweets. It's the one thing I really hope would be in closing arguments was that they would point that out in the many misleading statements that have been made to them to try to get them to think things mean things that they don't mean.
Speaking of closing statements.
Yeah. So speaking of closing statements, Alan Jackson has also made a motion for an hour and a half rather than an hour. An hour and a half.
She said, I might give you an hour and 15. He's like, I should have asked for 2. Yeah.
And of course, our friend Brennan was like, well, I'll do whatever you say, Your Honor. So let's talk about today.
Yes.
Rentschler gets on the stand today. There was direct at the start where he tried to be jovial, and Judge Beverly Cannoni was not having his joviality. He tried to wish his son happy birthday, yada, yada, yada. Whatever. I mean, maybe I can argue that that's inappropriate, so it's fine. So then he began his PowerPoint on direct. And his PowerPoint included, which I thought was so interesting, a lot of the slides and videos that Dr. Wolf presented that some folks, including on court TV when I was appearing on it, thought might be damaging to Karen Read's case because they were able to visualize an arm hitting a car and the taillight shattering, even though it wasn't consistent. He showed those again on like a loop, right? And then he also showed on a loop Judd Welcher rolling himself into the taillight with the paint. And he said exactly what I said, that the only thing he learned from that is if you hold your arm in an intentional position, you will get paint on your arm.
The only thing you learned from it was geometry.
Exactly. And the only thing you learned from dropping a mannequin is that a mannequin falls when you drop it. Like
it's exactly what you said on court TV.
It's literally.
Actually.
I feel like he watched my appearance, but I know he didn't.
Maybe he did.
So, what were the most important things that you came out during his direct examination today?
So many things. I mean, the part about the hoodie. One of the things that he said, I highlighted a few things. He said John's hoodie, did they use it to determine if the hoodie came in contact with the taillight? Because clothing can tell you where contact occurred. It gives you clues about the impact. So, of course, he studied the clothing. I think that it was really hammered home to the jury today, that part where he said there were 36 abrasions on John's arm and only 9 defects were noted in the hoodie sleeve.
Yep.
And the prosecution is positing that all of those abrasions, which another really amazing point that he corrected from Welcher's report, Welcher called those abrasions lacerations.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very different. And he made that point. He's like, well, first of all, he called them lacerations. They're not lacerations. They're abrasions. And he said 36 different points of contact would have to get through the sweatshirt to get to the skin. And there were only 9 defects noted in the hoodie sleeves.
Right.
That was really powerful, I think, for the jury.
Mm-hmm. And we should, by the way, I just want to interject and say, it's also consistent with a dog attack. Yes. Because of the way fabric folds and because some of those abrasions look like they could be scratches and you don't need to pierce the hoodie to be scratched. I mean, this is something I know very well. Any dog owner would know this. If you get a dog jumping up on you, you can get scratches on your stomach, even if they go through your shirt. But, so I think that there's something there. And I think that the reason why Brennan kept crossing him and asking him about puncture wounds was because there was inconsistency in Dr. Russell's testimony about whether, there were punctures or not. But she said that she would not categorize them as punctures that weren't superficial, because superficial just means in the skin, right?
Yeah.
But I think that he was planning to bring a dog bite rebuttal witness to talk about punctures and decided not to.
I think you're right.
I think that's why he kept asking about that.
We can talk about how many abrasions there were and how many holes in the hoodie there were all day long. But if there are no pieces of taillight inside his hoodie, there's no DNA on the pieces of taillight that they have. Those are not the cause of the abrasions.
Right. Period.
Like, I think that is such a simple thing for the jury to understand. And a couple of other things that Rentschler, he was just sort of dragging Welcher, and I really appreciated it. And I think that's why he's not bringing Welcher back.
But he wasn't allowed to. Actually, what was interesting was Judge Beverly Cannoni ruled that he couldn't go after his work. He could comment on it, but he couldn't say it was wrong. Like, there was like a weird ruling there. So they kept trying to limit him, and he kept finding a way to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he did. He literally called Aperture's experiments not scientific.
Right.
One of my favorite parts today was he slowed the video down almost frame by frame of the test that Welcher did with the blue paint. And he broke it down for the jury. He's like, so if you see exactly where Dr. Welcher is standing, the way his arm is bent, if the car kept going forward the way that it is, his elbow would have never touched the car.
Mm-hmm.
So because his elbow would never touch the car, the doctor pushes himself into the car.
Right.
And he showed it in slow motion.
Again and again and again. It was literally on a loop.
I loved it. I was like, oh my God. He literally was like, look at this like fake ass doctor who just got paid $400,000 to do this stupid paint test, just like throwing himself into the car to try to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was great. And then he went through all the tests.
He did go through all the tests. And I think he did a clearer job explaining why the tests that were done than we had heard Wolf do, because Brennan can be a skilled cross-examiner, and he can be confusing on purpose, and that is designed to confuse the jury about the very clear information they just got. But today, I think the explanation of why they did 10, 17, 24, 29 was so clear, especially with the 29. You have to eliminate direct impact. You have to do, like, it's standard. And him talking about, I called it yesterday, by the way, that him talking about the mannequin, it would be the first question Hank Brennan would ask. You fucking knew it. Right. Yep. I knew it. And of course, he did talk right off the bat in his testimony about why they use this 50th percentile mannequin, even with hockey players, because that's the gold standard. And so, yeah, I thought it was just clearer.
Yeah, one of the other things that I highlighted was that for the 29 mile per hour test, they used Welcher's movements into the car for the test. And he made sure to mention that again. And then he said, in order for a pedestrian to move a substantial distance, say onto the lawn, for instance, 20 feet is what he was saying. And I loved how he corrected Brennan on that 20 feet thing. So basically what he was saying, Brennan kept saying, you would agree that details are important. Details are important. He said it probably 15 times. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. He's like, well, then why do you keep saying 20 feet? Do you know how far away John's body was from the car? And then he pulls up the stupid video, the video from the dash cam showing where John's body was. And of course, it's, 7 to 10 feet off the sidewalk. And he's like, yeah, but he also had to move with the car. And then Brennan posits this weird theory like, well, do you think he could have been sideswiped? And then his foot got stuck on the curb. And then he turned around and then he tottered and then he flew 10 to 15. And he was like...
He was putting new theories up that he caught his foot on the curb so after spinning around and then fell backwards and maybe did like a little walkie walk backwards.
Yeah. And he was like, I guess maybe that's possible, but he's spinning around. So what is backwards?
Right.
That's what he said. He said, what is backwards? And to me, when he said that, it made so much sense.
Right.
What is backwards?
Right.
And so anyway, he was saying that for John to have been hit and pushed that far into the lawn, it would have had to have been a center of mass hit.
Right. But there was no injuries that were aligned with that hit. None at all.
Did you hear the part about the airbag comparison that he did? I thought that was brilliant too. He was basically saying that, they do these tests. They use the crash test dummies in airbag deployment tests because often when someone's driving, their hand is on the steering wheel. So if the airbag deploys, that arm, because of the force of basically a giant pillow, he said, breaks the arm.
Right.
So how could a car going 24 miles an hour not break the arm? Mm-hmm. If basically a giant pillow coming out of a steering wheel could break an arm. I mean, it made so much sense. The way he was, I'm sure that the story he was going to tell about his son, Kai, happy birthday, Kai, by the way. I'm sure that the story that he was about to tell about Kai would have been really great because he was making some sort of a comparison.
Right.
Yeah, she just wouldn't let him get into anything that was human, which I thought was weird.
On Cross, she did.
And then, basically AJ broke down the x-ray of John's wrist. They digitized them today. They weren't on the big pieces of paper.
They did a great job in his PowerPoint too, showing all the breakages that would happen in the hand, which clearly the hand was accelerating faster because it was like that whoosh. And clearly it was so clear that bones there would break, so clear. And then he showed that video slow over and over and over again, and then he had the chart of the hand and he was like broken. What's broken on the x-ray? Nothing.
Not even like a
pinky
splinter.
bone. No.
Nothing. Oh, and he did make a point to say, John's arm was in fact, which we can't ever know this, if his arm was in fact at a 90-degree angle holding a glass, the first thing that would have hit the car would have been his knuckles. And his knuckles would for sure have been smashed or broken.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about this cross. There were so many things that happened in this cross that defied logic. To me, the first question he did ask was about the dummy. Did someone, of course, he tried to impeach him like they had some secret communication with the defense, which he did not have. He did a thing where he was repeating the question over and over and over again after I didn't get the answer he wanted. And I got the impression a few times, especially during this stuff about communication with the defense, that it was Bev who wanted to know the answer, which is why she kept allowing it. I had that impression several times. This came up again, that it came from voir dire, that he ate a sandwich in the room where the defense team was after the last time he testified, and then they gave him a ride to the airport, or they arranged a ride to the airport. And I think what one needs to understand is he had no idea he would ever be seeing these people ever again. His testimony was over. Why wouldn't he have a sandwich when they offered him a sandwich? So Hank Brennan kept, before we get to what he did to his own expert witness, let's talk about the fact that he kept positing weird theories. One of the things that he said after, Rentschler once again asserted, truthfully, that no bones were broken and the x-ray showed it, is, would an MRI show injuries that these x-rays don't show?
Of a dead person.
As anybody who's ever had a sports injury or any kind of MRI knows, it's largely soft tissue that you're looking at there, and not obvious shit that would happen when you got plowed down by a car.
Nope.
So it was really something. And, Rentschler kept asking him about Judd Welcher's report, and he just kept pointing out over and over and over again that Welcher only did the one test.
And it wasn't scientific.
Around the car hitting him. He said it over and over and over again. So let's talk about then what Brennan did to Welcher.
Do you mean before lunch?
I mean, the whole time.
Well, let's talk about before lunch,
go
because
ahead.
there was a little spat before lunch.
There was a little spat before lunch.
I have to say, I was kind of proud of Alan Jackson today. Today, I think he knew it was the last day, and he stood up throughout the day, and he argued with Bev in front of the jury.
That's right.
It's really meaningless in his analysis and conclusions.
Now that you've shared your opinions, can I get back to my question?
Sustained. So, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Brent, I'm going to see counsel at sidebar.
And I almost feel like they should have been doing that the whole trial.
They should have.
And today he really got his points across. But basically, Brennan was being an ass. That's what he was just being a total jerk to this guy.
For no reason.
Yeah, he was being mean. Rentschler kept giving his opinion or answering his questions. Brennan would posit this big, long, weird question. And then Rentschler would say, no, I don't think so. And then he would go on to explain.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was done, Hank Brennan would say something, are you done? Are you done giving your opinions? Can we actually get back to my question now? And he said that 2 or 3 times, and it was objected to, and she sustained the objection. They had I think 2 sidebars about it. Basically, the sidebars were about him being a jerk.
Yeah.
He did it again right before lunch. I couldn't hear exactly what he was saying because they were talking over one another. He said something along the lines of, this is ludicrous.
Yeah.
This is ludicrous. And she was like, okay, Mr. Jackson. Okay, Mr. Jackson. And then
he and Brennan got into a little dust up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It happened a couple of times today. One of my favorite moments of what Jackson did, and I think we'll probably get to it later, but it was a moment where there was an objection from Jackson. She said, I'll allow it. Jackson said, are you sure you want to do that? Do you remember that moment?
Yeah. It was stunning.
And she said, yes. And then you know what she did? She asked the question to the witness.
That's right. Which she's not supposed to do.
No, but after that was him saying, you're going to do this?
You're
going to
making a
allow
mistake.
this?
Yes.
You are making a mistake. And she went right ahead and she asked the question herself.
So when they got back from lunch, there was some more pedantic shit. He was being challenged about his footnotes and his citations. And what really struck me about Rentschler, the witness, the speed with which he gave all of his answers means to me he's telling the truth. He
Absolutely.
remembered what he said in prior proceedings. He didn't need to check. And it was because he knew if he just said the truth, it would be the same as last time.
Mm-hmm.
He remembered all of his own citations, the stuff he looked at. And Brennan tried to catch him up on one of these citations by saying, did you eliminate this one paragraph on purpose? And then he proceeds to read the paragraph, which is about the front of a sedan hitting a human being and the human being vaulting off the hood. Yep. And Rentschler said, yes, I did. I did not put that in on purpose because it has nothing to do with being hit by the back of an SUV. It was a great moment. And there were so many moments he just did that. He was just like, yes, yeah, but that's not relevant because he wasn't hit by a car. Yes, that's not relevant. But he said it in such a strenuous way. Yeah.
One other thing about the citations that I almost fell out of my chair laughing about this part. He's like, do you know that Dr. Welcher had 26 footnotes? Citations. And he's like, yeah, I did know that. And he's like, did you read all of them? And he was like, no. He goes, they were all from the 60s and 70s. And the SUVs weren't even made until 86 or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, so I found nothing of substance, nothing valid or reasonable in any of those citations.
He also pointed out, by the way, that those citations weren't in his report. They were in like his other documents. Yeah.
Like his PowerPoints and stuff like that. And that was one of those moments when Brennan went, oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Kevin came into the room today while the trial was playing because I projected from my phone onto the big TV.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm so glad you guys identified those tells because he did it all day today. Okay. Oh. Okay. Oh. Like over and over and over again. It was wild.
Yeah.
All right. So now let's talk about what Hank Brennan did to his own expert witness, Judd Welcher, today.
He's a dumbass.
Now, keep
no wonder
in mind,
he's not calling. Welcher's probably pissed at him. He doesn't want to come back.
At this point, we think that Judd Welcher is coming back. And apparently, Sue O'Connell's observations about the jury were very funny. You know, she basically said a juror has her mouth open and looks shocked. As Brennan says, Welcher's report doesn't say location, distance, or speed. So it started out by him asking, it's almost like he went all in after asking one little test question. And we started out by him asking about the arm position and why they used the arm position they did in their testing. And he basically said, well, we based our testing on Welcher's theory, right? And on the presumed theory of the case. And he was like, do you think Dr. Welcher knew the position that John O'Keefe's arm was in? How would he know that?
He was like, state for me in any page of Dr. Welcher's report of the many gigs that they sent over to you where it says the arm position.
Right.
And he's like, I can't, because he never established it, because he doesn't know.
Right. But then he was like, why do you keep saying? And he said, because I think it's safe to assume that when he held up his arm to the taillight like this and said, ta-da, that he thought he had discovered the arm position. He didn't say that exactly, but that was essentially what he said.
That's how it sounded.
Another, like he was basically saying over and over again, like, isn't it true that Judd Welcher didn't do this kind of test? And isn't it true that Judd Welcher didn't, whatever? And then he would say, Rentschler said, it would be odd for Welcher to run a test to show something he didn't think happened. Like, because he was just like, why, Welcher didn't do this and Welcher didn't do this. And it's like, he told us what he thought happened and he only tested for those things, is what he kept saying.
What I think Brennan was doing, I think he was grasping at straws. I think he doesn't know what to do anymore. And basically he was taking all of the pieces that they think are strong evidence that there was a car accident and that Karen did this. So the DNA, the broken cocktail glass, the shards in the hoodie, the laceration/abrasions, whatever they might be on the arm. Basically, the cocktail glass was the one that sticks out to me. So he was taking all these points
and showing the pictures.
And all he was doing was saying to him, because he kept talking about the debris field, right?
This is the best part of the whole damn thing.
So he's like, did you know that there was a cocktail glass? And he's like, yeah. And so he puts up on the screen 4 or 5 different angles of the cocktail glass. And he's like, yep, that's the cocktail glass at the scene. And then he starts showing pieces of the taillight in the snow. And he goes, do you know what that is? And he's like, yeah, it looks like it's a piece of taillight. And he goes, do you know how it got to the scene in that small area around John's body?
Did you look at these photos and see that alleged piece of taillight shard recovered from the front yard area of 34 Fairview Road? Did you consider that?
Well, I don't. Was that part of the one that was recovered by a leaf blower or not?
I died. I absolutely died.
And then he goes on to say, actually, this was really important. He goes, I have no idea how that got to the scene or who put it there.
Yep. And then Brennan was like, do you have a theory that somebody planted evidence that you'd like to share with us? I was like, Brennan, do not say that out loud. No.
He didn't say it that nicely. He's like, are we going down the path where there's planting evidence now? He said it's something like that.
Yeah,
and I was like, you are dumb, buddy. This guy's getting to you and you're just spewing stuff out of your mouth. And you just gave that to the jury.
Right. Rentschler kept giving these very logical answers, which is the exact same thing we've been saying all along. That if the impact didn't happen, none of this other stuff matters. None of it matters.
Exactly.
And it's all based on conjecture. What do you think of this piece of debris being over here? I don't know. It's just conjecture because there was no car crash. What do you think of this? I don't know what to think of it. I don't know how it got there. There's no video of it getting there. Even when he said something about him holding the cocktail glass, he's like, is there video of him holding a cocktail glass? How do we, quote, know that he was holding a cocktail glass? It's all incredible. And then, asking him about Karen Reed's interview tape that they played about her pulling the piece of glass out of John O'Keefe's nose. He agreed that he had seen it. By the way, that documentary came out before the start of the trial, so there's no issue with him having seen it.
Welcher brought it up in his own testimony, so Welcher saw it too.
Absolutely. And he's just like, again, if that happened, as far as I know, it doesn't mean anything. And Brennan was getting so upset by this that instead of backing off, he'd go further and make it worse. And that was the pattern of the whole afternoon. Him positing insane theories that couldn't have happened, like with the curb thing. What he's trying to do, honestly, and it's very obvious, he's trying to plant like doubt in the jury's mind about his own theory so that they will go back to the room and say, well, maybe it didn't happen this way, but it could have happened this way. That's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, that's my point. What he was doing all day today is just sprinkling in all these major points that the prosecution thinks leads up to this accident or this, collision. And he doesn't understand that just having a witness identify the cocktail glass is not going to make the jury think the cocktail glass had anything to do with the accident.
He's just trying to remind them it was there. That's all. That's all those pictures were.
The glass on the bumper and the DNA and a blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. My other favorite moment came closer to the end. After Hank Brennan had completely eviscerated his own expert witness, basically saying that all of the testing Welcher did was based on nothing and had no relevance to whatever it was that ARCAA did. He asked him another question about the arm position, and Rentschler said, I'm just going to play the clip.
In video E, the arm that is sticking straight out, who determined that angle, Dr. Wolf?
We positioned it just so it would impact in the general area of what was shown in Dr. Welcher's paint test study, which apparently is irrelevant and doesn't show the alleged position of how the arm was at impact. But yes, we positioned it in that manner.
It was incredible. Basically, he was saying, you just told me that that test was irrelevant, so I can't even answer that question. I can't answer. And it was just like, that just kept happening. This was the most... I thought the cross-examination of Dr. La Posada was going to be the most disastrous cross-examination, and that if Rentschler was too dry or too jovial or too something, that it would be a potentially damaging cross-examination. It was so the opposite of that, I can't even describe it.
Well, that's what I was saying. I think the last 2 days have been really bad for Hank because he just had two expert witnesses hand his ass to him. From La Posada to Rentschler. Oh, you know what we didn't even talk about? I started to talk about it, but when I said, Hank would ask a question and Rentschler would answer the question at the beginning, but then go on to sort of give his opinion.
Yes. Say why he gave the answer he did.
Right. So he would say, in this instance that I'm talking about, he said the answer to the question was, no, it wasn't. And here's why. But it was the no, it wasn't where he answered the question. And then he finished. And this was after he had been reprimanded for being a, snarky jerk. So Hank was like, okay, you've given me your opinion. Are you going to answer my question? And he said, I'm sorry. I'll speak slower and clearer next time.
Exactly.
And Brennan goes, I'm asking you to answer my question. He goes, I did answer your question. I said, no, it wasn't.
I said it.
He was done.
A few times he said, I gave you my answer at the beginning of what I just said. And what was happening was Brennan stopped listening to him because Brennan would start asking a question before he was finished with his answer, which Jackson let happen, which was so interesting to me because Jackson objected to a lot of things today that were right to object to. He was not, a lot of objections were not sustained, but he then let things stay that would have been objections with almost any other witness because Hank was doing so poorly with this witness.
Yes, he was. And
asking a question while the witness is still answering. How many objections have we seen around this trial? Like, let them finish, Mr. Jackson, let them finish, Mr. Alessi. And Hank just plowed through because he wasn't listening because he was spinning.
And what was great about the point that you're making is that the courtroom camera so many times today would pan from Rentschler to Hank Brennan at the podium. And you can hear Rentschler answering in the background. And Hank is literally frantically going through his 3-ring binder. And sometimes he's actually putting papers back in and clicking. And he's not listening to anything. And you can tell. He's just waiting to get to the next question. Yeah. And I think that's when I knew that he was really screwed. Because he didn't even care what the answers were. Yeah. He was just trying to get his questions in. There was another moment, too, when Brennan was positing about, could he have been sideswiped and then done the pirouette and then tripped on the berm and lost his shoe. And Rentschler goes, yeah, I guess it's possible, but really anything's possible. John could have gotten hit by a car and somersaulted 3 times and fell in the yard. And it was just like, anything is possible because we don't know.
Right. But we do know that he wasn't hit by a car.
We do know that he wasn't hit by a car.
How many times did he say that today? Like so many times.
That was the other thing. Like Brennan really pushed him again because he was getting annoyed that Rentschler was getting snarky back to him. And Rentschler just goes, I don't even think he got hit by a car, sir.
Yeah.
Like
he kept saying it would be inappropriate for me to answer that because he wasn't. He also said he wasn't hit by a car. By the way, La Posada said the same thing to him.
Well, so that's another thing I found interesting is that these two expert witnesses have nothing to do with one another.
Right.
They probably never met. They've never spoken. And they handled the questions exactly the same way.
Exactly. This is so different than prosecution witnesses. So different.
Yeah. And it means that that's because they believe what they're saying and they're telling the truth.
Right. So I will say the thing that he said that we have been saying the entire time, and he said this near the end of his testimony, after he was being shown all of these other pieces of evidence, right? The evidence, things that are in evidence, the cocktail glass, the taillight, the tiny pieces of taillight that were not embedded in the shirt, all that stuff. He said that all of this other stuff, you're putting the cart before the horse if you are building your theory based on this ancillary extra-textual information. You first have to figure out if there was an impact, and there was not. And essentially he was like basically saying, so that stuff is fake, or you didn't actually come up with the right theory in the first place at all because you started at the wrong place. And it's just like, that's what we've been saying the whole time. You know, it's John DePietro is tweeted at me when I tweeted about the fact that he asserted about there being taillight embedded in the shirt or whatever, or, that he asserted there were no x-rays or whatever. And then he tweeted back to me, well, are you going to admit that the 237 search never happened? And I'm like, first of all, why would I do that? Because I don't fucking know, because I don't think it was proven definitively.
No.
But also, I don't care if the 237 search happened or not. It's a damning piece of evidence, even if she did it at 6 a.m., in my opinion. I don't care. Yep. I have never particularly cared. I care about her lying about everything. I care about her shadiness. I care about the pattern of lying of this entire family. I care about that because as an aggregate, it's bad, especially when it's been proven that there was no collision. It's very different on the other side, because when it has been proven there was no collision, then you should look at the totality of everything to start coming up with your theory. So that's where we're at. And I think it's just today was super interesting. Can I talk about another piece of news?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So I have been following on the side. There is another trial going on of Aidan Carney for violating a restraining order. And this is a restraining order that this woman, Lindsay Gaetani, who it's been proven set him up to appear that he sexually assaulted her. He did not, by the way. And I'm very comfortable saying that because the charges were dropped and all the evidence is now out about how that all happened. So she, last trial, went to the trial with Paul O'Keefe with the intention of having to keep Aidan Carney out of the courtroom. And so she got him charged for that, even though on video it shows him walking away. And that trial is happening right now. Colin McCabe is testifying right now. Paul O'Keefe is going to testify at this trial.
I knew that.
Lindsay Gaetani herself testified today. And what's happening in that courtroom, the only person tweeting about it in real time is that other problematic reporter, Jessica Machado, but her tweets are very thorough. And I was able to follow along with it today. There's video that was shown before the trial started, and it's in evidence now, but the judge watched it in his chambers and didn't let the room see it, because this is a bench trial. This is not a jury trial. And the video is of her on purpose getting into her ex's car with that she also had a restraining order against, and then calling the cops. So this is a person who weaponizes restraining orders. That's the case. And she clearly, I mean, I believe women, but this woman is not believable in these charges.
Well, it's on tape.
It's on tape, and there's many texts that show she was communicating with the cops on purpose to get Aidan Carney arrested. Like
setting him up. Like there's evidence of her setting him up.
That's not my opinion. It's that evidence has been out there and it is there. So that's a very interesting case, and I just want to let people know I'm keeping an eye on it, because to me, the tactics used against him in this case, it's the same people. It's the same exact anti-Karen Read group. Lindsay Gaetani talked in court today about going to that courthouse that day so that she could meet up with Jen McCabe, so that she could meet up with Paul O'Keefe, so that she could meet up with all of these top-level anti-Karen Read people. She is them. And so when you hear about her tactics were endorsed by them, suggested by them, and it's all the same. It's really interesting to me.
Is she the one that Jen McCabe bought the couch for?
Allegedly.
Yeah, okay. I was trying to figure that part out. Yeah.
It's out that allegedly Jen McCabe got her a sectional or something.
Sectional.
And then she tweeted the receipt for the sectional, and it showed that it was ordered and then paid for, but the receipt didn't have any payment information on it. So I'm not saying that Jen McCabe didn't. The other thing too, I think that's fair to say, is if Jen McCabe didn't personally order the sectional from Wayfair, she could have just given her the $600 to order the sectional from Wayfair. So
yeah, I mean,
there's been a lot of accusations about this. I'm not saying that they're definitely true, but I'm saying that these are the same people, and that's why this is worth watching to me. It's not because, I want all these juicy details, although, I kind of do, but it's mostly because she was in that camp for years, for like 2 years.
Yeah. And I'm going to totally agree with you. I think it's a perfect example of how these people are operating. And when you've got Brian Albert, who is a longtime Boston cop, knows all the ins and outs. You've got Brian Higgins, who's federal, he's an ATF agent, knows all the ins and outs and is best friends with the chief of police. You've got cops like Dever, who think that the bottom line is always the blue line. Mm-hmm. They know how to hide shit. And I will say something else. They're from New England. They know how to hide shit. Like, we know how to keep some secrets.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't live in New England anymore, but I learned how to keep secrets.
And you also probably heard a lot of phone messages like the one that Karen Reed left for John O'Keefe.
Fuck yeah, I did.
I'm not saying it's okay, but I'm saying that a lot of people in that jury have probably gotten lots of voicemails that are just like that.
I don't think that's the thing. I think that it's so funny to me when they try to use her voicemails against her, because I'm just like, you know what I hear? I hear someone who is so pissed off at her boyfriend for leaving her out in the car, and she thinks he's cheating on her. And who in their right mind would call the person they had just murdered and say those things?
Yep.
It's so stupid. Like, I really realized today that the prosecution is grasping at straws. And I think I've finally seen the sort of brilliance of the defense. And I don't think it's totally wrong for them to not call Higgins or Proctor.
I agree.
Even though I want them to.
I agree. And we're going to talk about this on Court TV tonight. The two subjects that I am being charged with opining on.
Ooh, what are they?
Are, why isn't Karen Reed proving her theory of the case, which is because she doesn't have to.
Third-party culprit.
She doesn't have to. The burden's on the state. And then the other question is, why was this a murder charge? And I am very excited to talk about that. I'm so excited to talk about that.
Do you know who you're on with?
For a guy I was on with the first time, I think, that guy Rick Grundy.
Oh. Grundy. He's not as bad.
I wish I was on with DePietro, but...
Ugh, I can't.
He's embarrassing. He's embarrassing.
It was embarrassing. And his reactions to what you were saying, again, it was just like he had so much confidence in his... conspiracies. They always say the free Karen Reed people are the ones who are coming up with conspiracy theories, but I'm now realizing it's actually the other side, I think.
Of course. And there are some wacky free Karen Reed people too.
For sure.
There are.
For sure.
But people keep saying like, oh, first you said this and now you're saying this. And I'm like, none of it matters. He wasn't hit by a fucking car. Like that's the main thing that you should be saying. And
did
it's also,
you prove that he got hit by a car? No, you did not.
Exactly. All right. So we should wrap it so that I can edit this, get it out in the feed for the people. And
just for the next couple of days, we should tell everybody, though, tomorrow they're doing the charging.
Yep. So there's probably not going to be a readathon tomorrow unless something very juicy happens in the charging day.
No jury tomorrow. They're coming in at 10 because Bev wants to sleep in. They're probably not going to do anything near a full day. And then they are supposed to work on, for the rest of the day, their closing arguments. Mm-hmm. And then it sounds like closing arguments are on Friday. And then the jury starts deliberating.
Right. So we could have a verdict Friday. We could have a verdict Monday.
We should go live.
We should. We'll talk about it. All right.
Okay.
All right, Mel. Thank you so much for joining me on the Readathon. And I know that we're going to talk tomorrow, even if we don't make a Readathon, but we'll definitely talk Friday.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Partners in Crime Media.